Have you ever wondered why some days you're on fire, getting everything done, while on others, no matter how much you need to do, you just can't seem to get started? What if I told you that both neuroscience and Buddhism hold the keys to unlocking your productivity? Stick around, because today we're diving deep into how these two powerful perspectives can transform the way you get things done. Now, let me ask you, what's really holding you back from being more productive? And is productivity just about getting more tasks done? Or is there a more balanced way to approach it? Here's the thing, productivity isn't just about doing more, it's about doing better. With focus, presence, and balance. And the best part? You can train your brain and apply Buddhist principles to achieve this without drastic changes. Curious to learn how? Let's jump in. Alright, let's talk about productivity. But before we dive into it, let me tell you this. Productivity isn't just about doing more stuff. It's actually about doing the right stuff, at the right time, with the right energy. And more importantly, it's about being in the moment with whatever task you've got in front of you. You know what I mean? In our fast-paced world, it's easy to feel like productivity is just crossing off as many things as possible on your to-do list. But that's not it. If you're familiar with Buddhism, you know it teaches us that true happiness doesn't come from endless striving. And science? Well, neuroscience tells us the same thing in a different way. Our brains aren't wired to just hustle non-stop. They need focus, they need balance. So, how does the brain come into play when it comes to being productive? Let's break it down. You see, our brain controls everything: focus, motivation, and energy levels. When we're trying to get things done, it's all about how well our brain can stay focused. The more scattered your brain is, the less productive you'll be. Sounds simple, but we all know staying focused isn't always easy. Here's the thing, our brains love rewards. Every time we achieve something, even a small task, our brain gets a hit of dopamine. You know, that feel-good chemical. It's like the brain's way of saying, hey, you did good, let's do more of that. This is why we feel so accomplished after ticking off tasks. But here's where Buddhism comes in. While it's awesome to feel good after completing tasks, we need to avoid being attached to that feeling. We don't want to become slaves to the high of constant achievement. The Buddha taught non-attachment for a reason, right? Now let's talk about something pretty cool, flow state. Ever hear of it? It's when you're so immersed in what you're doing that everything just clicks. Time flies, distractions fade, and you're in the zone. Neuro-wise, this happens when different parts of the brain synchronize and you enter a state of pure focus and joy in the activity. It's like meditation in motion. In a way, being in flow is similar to the concept of mindfulness in Buddhism. You're fully present, doing what you're meant to be doing, without the noise of past worries or future anxieties. But here's the catch. Getting into flow isn't about forcing it. It's about aligning your tasks with your energy levels and mental clarity. That's where habits come into play. Habits, good or bad, are like well-worn paths in your brain. The more you walk down a path, the easier it becomes to follow it next time. This is why building productive habits is so powerful. You're literally rewiring your brain to make focus and productivity your default mode. At the same time, let's not forget the Buddhist philosophy here. Effort is important, but so is letting go of the need for constant achievement. Being productive isn't about grinding all the time. It's about finding that balance, being present with your work, and remembering that your worth isn't tied to how much you get done. So next time you're feeling scattered, take a step back. Breathe. Remind yourself that productivity is a balance between focus and presence. When you're truly in the moment, whether you're working on a project or just enjoying a cup of tea, you're being productive in the most mindful way possible. That's where the magic happens, both in your brain and in your life. All right, now let's dive into mindfulness. And trust me, this is one of the keys to really unlocking your focus. I know you've probably heard the word mindfulness thrown around a lot lately. It's everywhere, in apps, books, and podcasts. But here's the deal. In Buddhism, mindfulness is everything. It's not just a trendy word, it's a way of life. And guess what? It's also one of the most powerful tools for productivity. When we talk about mindfulness, we're talking about being fully present with whatever you're doing, no matter how small the task. You're not thinking about what you did yesterday, and you're not stressing about tomorrow. You're here, right now. It's like when you're meditating, you're sitting, you're breathing, and your mind is right there with you. No wandering off into the past or future, just present. This is where Buddhist philosophy really shines. In Buddhism, there's this idea that life happens in the present moment, and if you're constantly distracted, chasing after your thoughts, you're missing out on life itself. The same goes for productivity. When you're working on something, but your mind is bouncing all over the place, checking your phone, thinking about what to have for dinner, worrying about that meeting next week, you're not really working. You're busy, but not productive. See the difference? Neuroscience backs this up too. Our brains are wired to focus best when we give something our full attention. When you multitask or get distracted, your brain has to constantly switch between tasks, and that actually makes you less efficient. You're using more energy and getting less done. That's why mindfulness is a game changer. It trains your brain to focus on one thing at a time. No distractions, no mental clutter, just pure focus. Now, let me give you a real-life example of how mindfulness can boost your productivity. Let's say you're working on a project, but your mind keeps wandering. Instead of forcing yourself to concentrate, which usually doesn't work, try this. Pause for a second, close your eyes, and take a few deep breaths. Bring your attention to your breath like you would in meditation. Just notice the sensation of breathing in and out. After a minute or so, gently bring your attention back to your task. You'll notice you feel calmer, more centered, and your mind is sharper. That's mindfulness in action. Buddhism teaches us that the mind is like a monkey. It jumps from thought to thought, always restless. But mindfulness helps tame that monkey. It trains your brain to stay focused on the present task, no matter how much it wants to run wild. And this is where the magic happens. The more mindful you become, the more productive you'll be, because you're fully here with what you're doing. Another big thing about mindfulness is that it's not just about focus, but also about acceptance. In Buddhism, we learn to accept things as they are, without judgment. This is important for productivity because, let's be real, sometimes things don't go as planned. You might hit a roadblock or feel frustrated with yourself for not getting enough done. But instead of getting caught up in that frustration, mindfulness teaches you to observe those feelings without reacting to them. It's like saying, yeah, I'm feeling stuck right now, but that's okay. I'm just going to keep moving forward, one step at a time. So how do you actually practice mindfulness to improve your focus? Here are a few simple tips you can try. Mindful breathing. Anytime you feel distracted, pause and take a few deep breaths. This helps reset your mind and brings you back to the present moment. Single tasking. Focus on one task at a time and do it with your full attention. Don't rush. Take your time and do it mindfully. You'll be amazed at how much faster and better you'll complete it. Body scanning. Throughout the day, check in with your body. Notice if you're tense, tired, or holding stress anywhere. Take a moment to relax those areas and reset your focus. Be present in the small things. Whether you're washing the dishes, walking, or even drinking tea, be fully present with the experience. It might seem small, but practicing mindfulness in everyday activities makes it easier to focus when you need to. In the end, mindfulness isn't about doing more. It's about being more present with what you're doing. The more present you are, the more productive you'll become, naturally. You'll find that your work feels smoother, more enjoyable, and way less stressful. And you'll start to notice that when you're focused on the present moment, things just seem to fall into place. So next time you catch your mind wandering, just bring it back to the present. Breathe, focus, and remember, productivity isn't just about getting things done. It's about being with what you're doing, fully and mindfully. That's the real power of Buddhist mindfulness. All right, here we go. Let's talk about rewiring your brain for productivity. Yeah, I said rewiring because, believe it or not, your brain is constantly changing. It's this amazing thing called neuroplasticity. Basically, your brain is like a piece of clay. You can mold it over time with the right habits and focus. And trust me, that's huge when we're talking about becoming more productive. So what does this mean for you? Well, it means that you're not stuck with your current productivity levels or habits. Whether you're the kind of person who gets distracted every 5 minutes, or you're a chronic procrastinator, you can change that. Your brain is ready to be rewired. You just need to show it the way. But let's take a step back for a second and look at this from a Buddhist perspective. In Buddhism, we talk a lot about the mind and how it's constantly shifting. We're always working with it through meditation, mindfulness, and awareness practices. The same principles apply to productivity. The mind can be trained, just like a muscle. And if there's one thing we know from both Buddhism and neuroscience, it's that consistency is key. What you do regularly, you become. So if you want to become more productive, you've got to train your brain to work that way, over time. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. One of the first things you need to understand is how habits work. Habits are like shortcuts in your brain. Think about it. When you do something repeatedly, whether it's reaching for your phone first thing in the morning or focusing deeply on a task, you're creating a neural pathway. The more you walk that path, the stronger it becomes. It's like wearing down a trail in the woods. The more you use it, the easier it is to follow. That's how habits are formed. And the cool part? You can create new paths and strengthen the ones that lead to better productivity. Here's a little tip. Start with small habits. The brain loves consistency, and trying to do too much at once often backfires. You know how in Buddhism we talk about the middle way, the path of balance and moderation? That applies here too. Don't try to overhaul your entire routine overnight. Instead, make small, sustainable changes. Maybe start with something like setting a timer for 10 minutes of focused work. That's it, no distractions for 10 minutes. Once that becomes easy, increase the time. Slowly but surely, you're rewiring your brain to focus longer and work better. And here's where dopamine comes in. I mentioned earlier how dopamine is like the brain's little reward system. When you accomplish something, no matter how small, your brain releases dopamine and you feel good. It's like, hey, look at me, I did it. This is why it's so important to celebrate the small wins. Every time you complete a task, even if it's tiny, your brain is like, oh, we should do that again. And guess what? You're training your brain to associate productivity with feeling good. But let's not get too attached to that reward, okay? Here's where Buddhism gives us some wisdom. The Buddha teaches us about non-attachment. Don't cling to the results. Yes, dopamine feels good, and yes, it's great to accomplish things, but don't let that define you. You're not your to-do list. The key is to keep showing up, keep practicing, but without being obsessed with the outcome. It's the journey, not the destination, right? Now, let's talk about something a lot of people struggle with: multitasking. We live in a world that praises multitasking, but guess what? Science says it's actually killing your productivity. When you switch between tasks, checking your phone, replying to emails, trying to focus on work, your brain has to reset every time. This is called context switching, and it drains your mental energy. You think you're getting more done, but you're actually slowing yourself down. Buddhism has a solution for this too. One-pointed focus. When you meditate, you're not thinking about 10 different things at once. You're focusing on one thing: your breath, a mantra, or whatever your meditation practice is. This single-minded focus helps you train your brain to stay with one task. The more you practice this in meditation, the easier it becomes to apply it to daily tasks. So the next time you catch yourself juggling 3 things at once, take a breath and bring your attention back to just one thing. You'll actually get it done faster and better. One more thing. Don't underestimate the power of rest. We tend to think that being productive means working non-stop, but that's not how the brain works. The brain needs downtime to process and recover. Think of it like a muscle. You wouldn't do bicep curls for 8 hours straight, right? Your brain is the same. In Buddhism, there's a strong emphasis on balance, the middle way again. It's not about pushing yourself to the extreme, but finding that sweet spot where effort and rest are in harmony. So to sum it all up, your brain is ready to be rewired for productivity. Through small, consistent habits, you can train your brain to focus, stay motivated, and avoid distractions. Celebrate your small wins, but don't get attached to them. And remember, productivity is not about doing more, it's about doing what matters, with full presence and focus, and knowing when to rest. Balance is key. Procrastination. We've all been there, right? That sneaky voice in your head telling you, "I'll do it later," or "I work better under pressure." But let's be real, procrastination is just a form of resistance. And the thing is, it's not just a bad habit, it's a mindset. The good news? Both neuroscience and Buddhism have a lot to say about breaking free from it. In Buddhism, procrastination can be seen as a kind of mental dukkha, suffering. It's that inner resistance that pulls us away from what needs to be done and keeps us stuck in our comfort zones. And if we're honest with ourselves, procrastination usually has deeper roots. It's not just about being lazy. It often comes from fear, perfectionism, or a desire to avoid discomfort. Sound familiar? Here's where Buddhist wisdom comes in clutch. One of the core teachings in Buddhism is about non-attachment. A lot of times, we procrastinate because we're too attached to a specific outcome. Maybe we want something to be perfect, or we're afraid of failing. So what do? We avoid it. But in the process of avoiding, we create even more stress and tension for ourselves. Buddhism teaches us to let go of that attachment. When we accept that nothing is ever going to be 100% perfect, we free ourselves from the pressure to avoid or delay. Let me give you an example. Think about when you've put off starting something because you didn't feel ready. Maybe it was a project at work, a creative idea, or even starting a new habit. The idea of doing it perfectly paralyzes you. In Buddhism, there's this concept called equanimity, which is about staying calm and balanced in the face of life's ups and downs. When you apply equanimity to procrastination, you realize that it's okay to not have everything figured out. The key is to start anyway, without clinging to the idea of perfection. Neuroscience backs this up. You know why? Because every time you avoid a task, your brain actually rewards you with a little hit of dopamine. Yep, the same dopamine that makes you feel good when you complete something. When you procrastinate, your brain says, "Hey, look, we avoided something stressful. Nice job." But here's the kicker. The stress doesn't go away. It builds up, and your brain eventually gets stuck in this cycle of short-term relief followed by long-term stress. So how do we break this cycle? One word: acceptance. In Buddhism, accepting things as they are is a huge part of the practice. When we apply acceptance to procrastination, we stop trying to fight the discomfort of starting a task. Instead of thinking, I don't feel like doing this, you can practice simply observing that thought. It's like noticing, okay, I'm feeling resistance right now, but that's just a feeling. It doesn't control me. By observing the discomfort without reacting to it, you start to loosen procrastination's grip on you. One Buddhist strategy that works really well here is breaking tasks into small, manageable steps. In Zen Buddhism, there's a saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It's a reminder that even the smallest actions, when done mindfully, move us forward. You don't need to tackle the whole mountain at once. Start with one small step. Instead of worrying about the entire project, just focus on what you can do right now. In neuroscience terms, this keeps your brain from feeling overwhelmed by shrinking the size of the task, making it easier to get started. Another approach from Buddhism is the concept of right effort, one of the elements of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right effort is about finding a balance, not pushing too hard, but not being lazy either. It's about steady, mindful progress. You're not rushing to get things done just for the sake of it, and you're not avoiding them either. You're finding that middle path where the effort feels natural and sustainable. Now let's talk about fear, because a lot of procrastination stems from it. Maybe you're afraid of failing, or you're afraid that your work won't be good enough. Buddhism teaches us that fear is just another form of attachment. Attachment to success, attachment to approval. By letting go of that attachment, we can move forward without the weight of fear holding us back. It's like when you meditate, thoughts come up, fears come up, but you don't engage with them. You let them pass. The same goes for the fears that fuel procrastination. They're just thoughts. You don't have to give them power. Here's a little practice you can try the next time procrastination strikes. When you notice yourself avoiding a task, pause. Take a deep breath and acknowledge the resistance. Don't try to push it away, but don't let it control you either. Just observe it, like you would in meditation. Then ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do right now to move forward? It might be something tiny, like opening your laptop or writing the first sentence of an email. Whatever it is, do it mindfully, without thinking about the bigger task. Just take that one step. By doing this, you're not only rewiring your brain for productivity, but you're also practicing the Buddhist principles of mindfulness, non-attachment, and right effort. You're breaking free from the cycle of procrastination by being present with what's in front of you and by taking small, steady steps forward. And that, my friend, is how you turn procrastination into action. So next time you find yourself putting things off, remember, it's not about forcing yourself to get everything done all at once. It's about letting go of the fear, accepting the discomfort, and taking that first step. You've got this. All right, so now we've talked about focus, mindfulness, and breaking the chains of procrastination. But here's something most people overlook when it comes to productivity. Rest. Yeah, I said it. Rest is just as important as the work itself. If you're constantly pushing yourself without giving your brain a break, you're setting yourself up for burnout. So let's talk about finding that balance between energy and rest, and how it plays a huge role in keeping your productivity sustainable over the long haul. Let's start with what neuroscience has to say. Your brain is like a battery. It only has so much energy in a day. When you're focused and working hard, you're using up that energy. And when the battery runs low, guess what happens? Your productivity drops, your focus fades, and everything feels way harder than it should. This is where rest comes in. Rest isn't just about zoning out in front of Netflix, though, hey, we all need that sometimes. It's about giving your brain the chance to recover. Without rest, your brain can't recharge, and you end up in this cycle of diminishing returns. Think of it like this. Imagine trying to drive your car without stopping to refuel. You might keep going for a while, but eventually you're going to run out of gas. It's the same with your mental energy. If you don't take time to rest, you're running on fumes. And here's the kicker. When you give yourself breaks, especially mindful breaks, your productivity actually improves. Neuroscience calls this the default mode network. It's the part of your brain that gets activated when you're resting or daydreaming. It's when your brain is doing some behind-the-scenes processing, making connections, solving problems. You ever notice how your best ideas come to you in the shower or when you're just chilling out? That's the default mode network doing its thing. Now, let's take a look at how Buddhist philosophy fits in here. Buddhism teaches us about the middle way, right? It's this idea of balance, avoiding extremes, whether that's too much indulgence or too much deprivation. The same applies to productivity. Constantly working without rest is an extreme. And you know what happens when you live in extremes? You suffer. In fact, the Buddha's own journey to enlightenment started when he realized that living a life of extreme asceticism wasn't the way to true peace. The same goes for our modern hustle culture. If you're constantly grinding, pushing yourself to the limit, you're going to burn out. Balance is key. But let's be real, it's not always easy to find that balance, right? The world we live in kind of glorifies being busy. You've probably heard things like hustle harder or sleep when you're dead. But here's the truth. That mindset is unsustainable. Buddhism teaches us that life isn't about extremes, it's about equilibrium. You don't have to choose between being productive and resting. In fact, you need both. They support each other. So, how do you actually bring more balance into your productivity routine? Well, one powerful practice from Buddhism that can help is mindful rest. Yeah. Resting mindfully is a thing. It's not about just checking out and scrolling through your phone. It's about being present with your rest. When you take a break, take a real break. Step away from your work, clear your mind, and engage in something that genuinely relaxes you. Maybe it's a short meditation, a walk in nature, or simply sitting in silence for a few minutes. The key is to let your brain truly unwind. There's also meditation. This is something that's been proven to not only reduce stress, but also boost productivity. It might seem counterintuitive, like, how does sitting still make me more productive? But remember, meditation is like a reset button for your brain. It helps clear mental clutter and brings you back to a state of calm focus. When your mind is less scattered, you're able to come back to your tasks with more clarity and energy. Even just 5 to 10 minutes of meditation can make a huge difference in how productive and centered you feel throughout the day. And let's talk about sleep. We all know sleep is important, but it's one of the first things to go when we're feeling busy, right? In Buddhism, there's a lot of emphasis on being aware of your body's needs. Ignoring your need for sleep isn't just bad for your health, it's bad for your productivity too. Neuroscience shows that sleep is when your brain does some of its best work, consolidating memories, processing information, and literally cleaning out toxins that build up during the day. So if you're cutting back on sleep to be more productive, you're actually sabotaging yourself. Another big part of sustainable productivity is letting go. Yep, back to that Buddhist principle of non-attachment. Sometimes we push ourselves too hard because we're attached to the idea of being super productive, or we feel like we're not doing enough. But as Buddhism teaches, clinging to these ideas just causes suffering. Let go of the need to always be on, and trust that rest is part of the process. You don't have to prove your worth by how much you do. True productivity is about being present with your work and your rest. So, here's your takeaway. To be sustainably productive, you need to balance effort with rest. Work mindfully, but rest mindfully too. When you're working, be fully present and focused. And when you're resting, really let yourself rest. That's how you keep your energy up, avoid burnout, and actually get more done in the long run. You're not a machine, you're a human being. And just like in meditation, the goal isn't to force things, it's to let them flow naturally. In the end, productivity isn't a sprint. It's more like a marathon. And marathons are all about pacing yourself. Take your time, be mindful, and remember to give yourself space to rest. That's the real secret to staying productive for the long haul. And there you have it. We've explored some powerful ways to boost productivity, blending insights from neuroscience and Buddhist wisdom. Whether it's rewiring your brain with small, consistent habits, using mindfulness to stay focused, breaking free from procrastination, or finding that balance between work and rest, remember, productivity is about presence, not pressure. It's about aligning your energy with what truly matters, while still giving yourself the space to breathe and rest. Thank you so much for sticking with me until the end of this video. I really hope these tips resonate with you and help you find that sweet spot of being productive without burning out. If you found value here, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any future content. Also, if you know someone who could use a little boost in their productivity, feel free to share this video with them. Let's spread these ideas and help more people find a more balanced, mindful approach to getting things done. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.